What's up guys, welcome back to the Drone Camps channel. Today DJI officially released their digital FPV system on their website, and there's been a few reviews out there, and some of the ones that I have seen I have a mixed opinion on. So with an educated opinion of 10 years of FPV, we're going to talk about some of those concerns in this video, and when I get a pair of them I will share some of my own testing with you. But until you can get that honest opinion from me, we're going to talk about some of the concerns that I personally have with this particular system, and let's go ahead and get started with the first concern. But let's get one thing straight before you guys start saying, oh, Justin's a DJI hater. I'm not a DJI hater. In fact, if you look back on my channel, there are hundreds and hundreds of videos and tutorials sharing my love for DJI products and their quads. So look back, check them out. They are there. Now, first and foremost, we have to talk about the price for this system. The entry-level price to get into these goggles is $819. That's without the DJI transmitter. I've also been told that we can use this system with our existing Taranis transmitters and a Crossfire. So that's kind of a nice thing to know. The next thing is that if you need the remote is $299 by itself. The goggles are around $500 by themselves. The camera is around $59. If you want to add in the controller, that's going to be $929 for the complete package with the transmitter. So I know some people have said, well, that's around the same price as something like a pair of Fat Shark HDOs and the Rapid Fire system. But honestly, I live in a town full of 2 million people, and I honestly know a couple people with that setup, and those are mostly serious multi-GP pilots. Now, while that's a pretty big entry-level price to get HD video in 28 milliseconds and up to 40 milliseconds latency time on your quad, one of my other concerns is having multiple quads. Most of us have a wall of quads in our shops where we work on our quads. So if you have multiple quads and airplanes, that air module, that's that little VTX transmitter that's on the reviews. It looks like a little silver box. That's $99 for that. You're also going to need a camera to go along with that, unless you're hot swapping the camera from one unit to the other. The camera is $59. The VTX itself is $99. So it's going to be $159 per aircraft. And looking on their website, they have the complete unit also listed, and that's $179. So I think you have to have some extra cables to make that first part work. So in reality, we might be looking at $179 to outfit each of our quads and our airplanes with this DJI FPV transmission system. Now, the system is also running on 5.8 gigahertz. It says on the specs in their website, and they also say not to fly it around Wi-Fi. Now, the system is running on 5.8 gigahertz, and they say it can get you out there around 4 kilometers. That's about 2.5 miles. One thing that I do like is the little tiny antennas that they have on this system. In comparison to the Connex, which look like a huge FPV church steeple, they have much smaller, more up-to-date 2019 looking antennas. They are left-hand circular polarized, working with the ones on your goggles. Those also are super miniature versions of left-hand circular polarized antennas. And those antennas on the goggles are running from 2.5 dB to 3 dB for the actual ratio bandwidth on 5.8 gigahertz. Now, in one of the most popular reviews out there, you'll notice that in the beginning of the review, everybody's like, oh my God, HD on the quad, it looks so beautiful. Oh God, give me the goggles and let me try them. And everybody's flying them, and they're doing really well in the very beginning. But over time, what happens is they end up crashing it somewhere where they can't get to it right away. And this happens a lot in FPV. You crash into a tree, you might get it back for an hour or maybe even the next day. If it sits there and it heats up and it heats up and it heats up, it needs to have some kind of temperature sensor on this VTX that will stop it and turn the power down to a safe 25 milliwatts. That way, if it realizes that it's kind of overheating, it would be nice to have something pop up on the screen that you're getting close to overheating, so that maybe you can turn the quad around and start coming back in to land to set it down, to let it cool off. Without a temperature sensor on there and some type of warning on the screen, you are clueless when you're flying out miles and miles, and you have no idea what's going to happen when the system overheats. What does it say that it happens on in the specs? If you look on the Q&A on their website, is that it's going to start to get really laggy. And when it starts to get laggy, the next step is probably going to be that you have a system failure or a crash. So that's one of my big concerns with it. Does it have a temperature sensor on board to be able to safeguard the system from overheating? Now the next thing is that if you understand that part of the process of flying this system, if you're flying out there for 3 to 4 miles, you will notice that most of the long range guys do not use RunCam split or any type of HD transmission system. I wouldn't even use the Cadex Tarsier on something I was flying miles out. Why? Because of the crash factor. RunCam split has also crashed on me, and when it crashes, it freezes frame and you go crashing down to the ground, something like this. So maybe DJI is listening and they can come up with some kind of firmware update coming up in the future that will have some type of sensor in there to sense temperature and overheating. The next thing that people don't seem to be asking on Facebook and on the forums is, does it have a power control on the VTX? Can we change the power? It would be nice to be able to run this system at 25 milliwatt, 100, 200, 300, 400, and so on. If you can't do that, then you might be blasting other people out at a race. You need to be able to have some way to control the power setting on the VTX. One other thing that I didn't see mentioned was that there are 2 settings in the goggles. One is for your faster transmission rate, and the other is for high quality viewing. So I'm wondering how high the latency is for the high quality viewing. That's going to be a concern for me, because if we have to crank it down to the low setting to get that more real-time FPV view, then that's also probably another question that I have. Until I can get my hands on a unit, I honestly won't know. But one of the things that I'm concerned with also is that the DVR only records in 4.3, so 4:3 ratio. That's more of a square TV format, not the 16:9 wide aspect ratio. If you want to change that later, you're going to have to do that in post. Now, when you change them on the goggles, it is changeable between 4:3 and 16:9 inside your goggles. But the problem with that is it does crop the top and the bottom of the image, basically shrinking it, expanding the 4:3 up to that 16:9 format, so you lose part of your peripheral on your field of vision. Now, one other thing that you have to know is that the camera is not switchable between other FPV cameras. You have to use the DJI camera that comes along with the system. One other thing is that it only works with 4S quads at the current moment. It does not support a 6S quad. So if you're running a 7-inch quad with a 6S battery, that's not going to work out for your 6S batteries. Another thing is that if you're going to use the DJI controller, you're limited to 7.5 hours of flight time. You're going to have to take that unit back to your house or your AC outlet somewhere and charge that battery back up. It does not have a battery hatch on the back of the remote to hot swap batteries in and out. Also, to activate your goggles, you're going to have to use the DJI Assistant app. You're going to have to log in, make an account, and activate your goggles with your serial number inside that app. As far as whether it records your flights on the videos, probably not, but DJI will have to have your information and your email address to get your goggles working. Another question I've been asked is, are these DJI goggles compatible with the other DJI drones out there, like the Mavic 2, the Mavic Air, the Phantom 4, the little Spark? And the answer is no. And right now, Betaflight is supported on there. I have not seen OSD up on the display yet, but I do know that Betaflight 4.1 is supported. But getting back to the heat issue, this unit does get really hot when you're using it, and there doesn't seem to be any way to switch the power right now as of the date of this making of this video. But I also did read that it has a low power mode. So what happens is the other reviewers were experiencing low power mode before it gets to that critical point. What happens is it breaks it down to 30 frames per second and around 60 milliseconds for the latency. So your latency gets super high. If you're trying to freestyle or you're out there on a long range mission somewhere flying between trees or up high in the mountains, that could be a critical moment and also possibly cause a crash. So you want to be careful about this system overheating. But I think the good news about all this is that if you have the money to buy a set of these goggles and get it up in the air on a quad and flying, you will need the type of quad that will accept this taller stack. You're going to have it encased inside the frame to protect it. You don't really want it riding on top of the quad, in my opinion, because these units are quite expensive, and it would kind of be terrible to have them damaged in a crash. So putting them underneath that top plate, you're going to have to raise it up around, I believe it was around 40 to 50 millimeters. So it's going to have to be a pretty tall standoff to get it underneath that top plate on your quad. You're also going to have a quad that accommodates some type of TPU mount for the camera in the front, since you are raising it up. But the other nice thing is that even though this system is expensive, it looks like it's fairly user-friendly. I think it's going to help bring more new users into our hobby, and I think that's one super beneficial part. They might buy this setup to begin with and then end up buying another pair of goggles somewhere down the line later, because they want to experience more versatility and a cheaper cost. And cost is the big factor here. If you're someone on a budget, this is probably not going to be the setup for you. If you have an extra grand laying around that you don't mind throwing into this system and getting yourself that transmitter as well, you can do that. I'm not a big fan of that transmitter. It does have super tight sticks, which you could go in and adjust, but stick to the Phantom 4 with that transmitter. I really don't think it's a race quad transmitter unless you're doing some very straightforward flying. But one other thing that I have a concern with is my micro brushless. I'm not going to be able to even probably decase this unit and be able to put it on my smaller than 3-inch quads. Anything around 100 millimeters, I'm probably not going to be running that system on there, mainly because of size and weight factor. So it is a little heavier, so you're probably going to be sticking to 3-inch to 5-inch quads. So a lot of the new guys getting started, you're not going to be able to put it on the smaller quads. But again, honestly, I'm not a DJI hater, you know, and as I have been called that because I expressed my concerns. And if you were expressing concerns on new gear, that shouldn't automatically label you as a hater. I'm not a DJI hater. I'm just concerned with some of the aspects of the way this hardware is created and some of the specs that are on the website in correlation to what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve. Is this going to be something for everybody? Is it going to rock the FPV community? It will for the people that have the money to be able to outfit all their quads with it. Otherwise, you're probably going to stick to what you have already and just put a Caddx Ratel on there and be done with it. That's just going to be way cheaper, and it's going to give you more versatility. With a regular set of FPV goggles, you can fly any quad out there with any camera on it. So that's the biggest concern that most of us need to think about. Quads, planes, RC trucks, whatever you're putting cameras on, your traditional FPV cameras and your goggles will still work with everything, but not this system. So that's one thing to think about. But again, I'm not a hater. I think it's really cool. I love HD, and everybody's been wanting this. So I gotta say, good work, DJI, for making this system available even in a 1.0 version. I'm happy that it's here, and I think that it's only going to get better as the months go by. But with more testing coming up on the channel right here, you will find out when I get a pair. Hopefully by then it'll be a couple more firmware versions ahead, and I can give you an honest opinion on it and how it performs. Thanks again for watching my videos, guys. I'm Justin Davis. Peace out. I'll see you on the next one.